showing you how to make these white lily and aloe bath fizzies. Bath fizzies are so easy to make, and they really add a luxurious feeling to your tub. These particular bath fizzies use the amazing white lily and aloe fragrance oil from Bramble Berry's Botanical Garden collection. I love it. There's a little bit of rosehip tea in it, of course some green notes, and then aloe and lily. Really smells fresh. We're also using dried jasmine flowers, which add a beautiful touch. I really think it adds some sophistication and interest to these bath fizzies. We're also using aloe extract to add a little bit of moisture in your tub. And finally, totally an optional ingredient, this Polysorbate 80. What that helps to do is prevent ring around the tub and also helps to prevent any oil from pooling at the top of your tub, which makes your tub a little safer to get out of after you're done draining it. Today, I'm also going to be showing you how to use the Bramble Berry Bath Bomb mold and package. Now this will honestly, it's a little trickier to use. It's a two-part mold, and so we're going to go over some of the pros and cons of both this mold and some of the other molds that Bramble Berry carries and why you use this over other molds. And I'm going to show you my tips and tricks for getting these to stay together and how to pop your bath fizzies out so you get perfect round spheres every time. So the first step for doing bath fizzies is gloves. And it's not because anything we're doing here is particularly dangerous. It's because if you're wearing nail polish, that citric acid just scours your nail polish right off. And so I like to protect my nail polish. Another thing that some people like to put on is a mask. And that is because this baking soda can get just a little bit airborne. It can go into nasal passages, can be irritating. I work a little more slowly and it doesn't really bother me. But if it bothers you or if you have a sensitive respiratory system, by all means, just get one of those regular masks like they use for painting and use that. So this is 2 pounds of sodium bicarbonate or baking soda, and you'll notice it is very, very, very clumpy. So that's why we run it through this sieve, because any clumps that are in your final mixture end up looking kind of like little warts, little things that kind of are growing out of your bath fizzy. They won't hurt anything, but they're kind of unsightly, and that's not what you want in your bath fizzy. Now I'm just going to add my citric acid. This is a little heavier than the sodium bicarbonate, so you won't notice quite as much kind of particles in the air, but I still work slowly if I'm not wearing a mask. I'm going to mix these dry ingredients together with my hands before I add my wet ingredients, just to make sure that this is fully incorporated. Now it's time to add the wet ingredients. This is 1 ounce of the aloe extract. And what I really like about this aloe extract is it's in fractionated coconut oil. So that's going to add just a little bit of moisture to your bath fizzy, and it's really lightweight, and so it won't weigh down the kind of oil in the tub. Then I'm going to add polysorbate, doing 0.3 ounces, and this is a scale that measures all the way down to the 1/100th of an ounce, so it's very accurate. We get 0.3 ounces. And like I mentioned, the polysorbate is totally optional. I just like it because it creates a slightly silkier feeling and also really helps that oil disperse in the water as opposed to floating on top of the water. Finally, 0.5 ounces of the white lily and aloe fragrance, and that's half an ounce. And you're like, oh, that's a lot of fragrance. Remember, each of these bath fizzies is fragrancing an entire bathtub. So it is a lot of fragrance, but the end result's totally worth it when you have wonderfully smelling tub. Okay, I also have witch hazel in here. The witch hazel is in here because it's a beautiful wetting agent, because this is a lot of liquid, but it's not quite enough to get everything to come together perfectly. I'm also going to set my molds out ahead of time because once I get that perfect consistency, I want to be able to mold pretty quickly. Now I'm just going to start mixing with my hands, and it's really key to get all these wet ingredients kind of worked all the way to the bottom. That's another reason to wear gloves. If you're making really big batches of bath fizzies, I like to use one of the stand mixers because that does a lot of the kind of manual mixing and shifting for you. But for smaller batches like this is perfect. So now I'm going to check to see what this is. So do you see how this is not sticking together? It's close, but it's not perfectly sticking together. We want it to be kind of like a pie crust. So I'm just going to do about 10 spritzes of witch hazel, mix it up again, another 10 spritzes of witch hazel, mix it up until I get the perfect consistency. So now I have a pretty perfect consistency. Notice that this is sticking together really nicely. It's ready to start molding. First steps first. These molds have a male and a female side. So you always want to make sure you're putting the male and female together as opposed to trying to stick two that don't stick together right together. You also want to line up your tabs. So a male and a female, put a little bit of the dried jasmine flower here, just a little bit to the bottom. Now, put the Bath Fizzy mixture in, and what we want to do is press it in pretty tightly and make sure there's nothing kind of around the rim. Set that guy to the side, and then what we're going to do is fill the next one up. And this is the female side, and it has a kind of a reverse rim that you want to make sure is totally cleaned out, so that way the two sides can stick together. You can see that here. I'm just going to clean this out and make sure that these channels are totally cleaned out. Now to glue the two sides together, just mount up a little bit of Bath Fizzy mixture in the middle there. Again, we want to make sure that there's not any sitting in the channel though, because we have to marry the two sides. And then, this is kind of where it takes a little bit of elbow grease. You take the two sides together, you push them together, you match up the tabs, and then you can just, and when I say just, this is a little more than just, you can push the two sides together until they seal. Now, I often will just literally just kind of hold it against my body, because it's almost the easiest way to get the most even. And then you're done. You set these aside. What I like to do with these is just let them sit for really no more than a couple days. What I notice with these is if they sit for up to a week, they get a lot more difficult to get out of the mold, which is interesting because these are really perfect for shipping. So you're like, kind of want to use them for shipping. You can, but just remember the person on the other end is going to have a little bit more trouble getting them out of the mold if they sit in there for longer than about a week. Definitely one of the pluses though of this mold is once you pull these out kind of like this, you can wash this and dry it and reuse it again. I reuse these molds all the time, usually 3 to 5 times at least before they kind of start degrading and cracking. So that's another really nice plus about these Bramble Berry molds. Now, if you're looking at these and thinking those look a little too advanced for you, not to worry, Bramble Berry has a really perfect bath bomb mold that looks like this. It's also another little kind of packer one, but it's a lot easier to fill. And so I'm just gonna pop this one out. See, it comes out perfectly. And you guys, when I make Bath Fizzies with my 5 and 7-year-olds, this is what I make them in. And again, these are reusable too. So, and they come with a lid as well. So really easy to make these. You just fill the bottom with your jasmine flowers, and then you put your Bath Fizzy mixture in. You press down firmly, clear out the channel just like we just did with the rounds. Then you pop a lid on, and then these are done. They're ready to go. And these actually don't quite weld shut together like these ones do. So they can do a lot better for kind of travel and packing and keeping them in this particular mold for months at a time. Another nice thing about using this particular mold is this takes the guesswork out on if they're going to actually stay together, right? So it's just one cavity and done, as opposed to this one where you're like, are they going to stay together? Did I do that right? So it's kind of a little more advanced mold. Another option for your Bath Fizzies is also the stainless steel mold from Bramble Berry. And what I like about it is it can be reused over and over again. I also like it makes a really big Bath Fizzy. And we call it the Mondo. Like it makes a giant Mondo Bath Fizzy. So you can do the same exact thing for this one. This is definitely, of all the ones, probably the most advanced because you have to figure out how to get these two sides to come together and then pull them apart. But let me show you how that one works. I've got my jasmine flowers in the bottom. Put all my mixture in here, and then I'm going to pack it in as tight as possible. And it's totally fine to have a little bit on the top because remember we need to glue the two sides together. So with this one, I haven't packed it quite as tightly, but I'm going to put a little bit of glue together for both. And then when I say a little bit of glue, that's like a lot of glue. Just going to kind of round it together, and I'm going to try and push them together so that then they end up staying together. And just kind of pull. There we go. Now you may be wondering, well, now what do I do, right? If you have a lot of these molds, now this can just sit in here and dry. But if you're like most crafters, you don't have a lot of these molds. So what I like to do is just kind of pop the next back in, and then kind of try and get that second part out. You just carefully, gently wiggle it. And now the question is, what do you do with this, right? You have to put it on a surface to dry, but it can't be on a kind of a flat surface. So I like to use the Bramble Berry silicone round molds. You could use a muffin tin. In the past, I have kind of taken eggshell containers and kind of like used a knife to kind of make a perfect holding pattern. Whatever it is, you don't want to just plop this right on the table because the weight of this bath fizzy is so heavy that literally the entire bath fizzy just goes and flattens out on the bottom. So put this into some sort of holding container if you're using this. I'm just going to make the rest of these molds, but the last thing I'm going to do for you guys is I'm going to show you how cool these are when they fizz. So I'm going to finish all these off, and then it's some fizzy time. And it's still going, yeah. Wow, this smells so good, you guys, and I can't wait to see what you create. Make sure you're hashtagging your creations, #BrambleOn, so I can see that on Instagram and Twitter and wherever you're posting them. I love our community, and I hope you do too. Until next time, you guys.